Good day, podcast community. Pete Kane here, Podcast Pete and certified high performance coach. Now, we got a very special podcast that we have planned for you today. My mentor in the wonderful field of AI and other things got my start in podcasting because of Jeff. And there's other things. I'm now in the Philippines 2.5 years ago because of Jeff, and I could go on and on. So, but I won't. I want you to hear from him because Jeff, tell our viewers who you are, what you do, and who you serve, and then we'll get into our podcast.
I love it. And Pete, you honor me. You and I are just on the journey together. I just happen to be a couple steps ahead. And I will say, of all the people I've suggested, you should look at podcasting. You dove in with both feet and said, hell yes. So sorry, you can edit that out if I'm going to break your language barrier. So who I am, what I do, who I serve. So it's important I share this up front. I am neurodiverse, which if anybody doesn't understand that term, you're probably not my people. But basically, Pete and I, we can empathize with people who are either on autistic spectrum or ADHD or others. And basically what I do is I help our people find order in the chaos. And that's going to sound very vague and fuzzy, but the reality is most technology was built for neurotypical brains. And honest to God, it's not intentional, but they attack our brains as if we were the invading hordes. So what I do is I help people figure out how to make the tech work for their unique brains rather than taking the beating and just hoping that things get better, because I promise you it doesn't. So short version, I help people figure out the technology they need so that their lives are better.
I love it. I love it. We shared that one report by, I think it was Perry Marshall, about eliminate, declutter, and really simplify. I don't know if the exact word, but
I think it was eliminate, automate, dominate, or something like that. Yeah.
Yes. And my whole life, it was clutter. Like I always had too much going on. I didn't know what to do. And I get to the end of the day and I do two things of 50. And when I started hanging around with you, I watched myself transform because I started to simplify my thinking, my writing, and to think that I'm a writer now, that would be my English teacher in high school who flunked would be turning over in his grave.
I guarantee, Pete, he's doing cartwheels in his grave just because.
Oh, yeah. and I always had I never, and I watched you at the early on, and then I'll get into this question. How you delivered video, and it was so precise, and I go, how does he think with that focus? And I got to understanding it through my journey, how it is a skill to put, kind of like put borders on your life. So tell me, like for our viewers, when you started kind of putting your big toe into AI, I remember you said to me, hey, just play with it. And I said, now I'm having too much fun doing podcasts, so I'm not interested. And then I did a one prompt and got the first version of a course, and I about fell out of my wheelchair. I was so blown away. So let's go back a couple of years when you started leaning into AI. Like, what was your thought like? Like, am I going to learn a new skill? And what have you discovered since then?
Well, I love that. And it's hard to believe. It feels like just yesterday, but I actually checked and I've been using AI for about 3 years now. And I will admit, just for anybody listening, I went through all the doomsday scenarios. I, really thought about Skynet ending humanity and, sending Terminators after us. But the reality was I found a lot, excuse me, I initially ignored AI, and I think a lot of people are in this boat. I ignored it because I was seeing a lot of garbage out there. like literal garbage. I'm reading it going, that looks like it was written by a crazy drug-induced clown doing something strange. Like, it's just very bizarre stuff. And, it's fascinating because people are still trying to figure out, oh, that looks like it was written by AI. The reality is, I don't care if it was written by AI or not. Garbage is garbage. Doesn't matter who wrote it. And that was when I started to see results, when I realized that the garbage was coming from people, and two things. Number one, they didn't understand what could be done with AI. But I'm going to be blunt, Pete. They also didn't understand what they were trying to get AI to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, I always tell people, you got to be the grown up in the room. You got to be the one saying, that doesn't make sense. My youngest, when he was about 9 years old, if I let him eat cookies all day long, he would have eaten cookies for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm the adult, and I got to say, maybe you should try something other than cookies. So to me, that was the first big aha moment, was that I threw the baby out with the bathwater. I dismissed AI in total initially because I just saw a bunch of people using it badly, and I assumed that was the model's fault. Now, for anybody listening, I could talk about ChatGPT specifically as a large language model. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that. They don't understand how they work. But really, truly, good large language models, we've got ChatGPT is by far my favorite. Gemini and I get along very well. I've not used the other ones. And this is probably my weirdest piece of advice, Pete. Get good at one and master it. And once you're good at it, and you can say, I can say with 100% certainty, I can accomplish a month's worth of work in a day using ChatGPT. Or I can waste that day learning how to do 50 other things and be bad at all of them. So my advice is always pick one, and the one you pick depends entirely on your day. If you're coding a lot, you're probably looking at Claude. If you're doing a lot of visual, you're looking at something like Midjourney, or now Gemini's, I think it's Banana or something. And by the way, whoever names these things, please do better. ChatGPT, for example, my brain hurts every time I have to say GPT. So anyway, sorry, total rant. But figure out what you need to be done, and then get good at that. And once you're good at that, and once you can say with sincerity, I saved 10 hours a week on this, then do something else. And for anybody who's not sure where to start, Pete, systems and processes. Spoiler alert, I'm Canadian. Everybody likes to correct me when I say processes. I know Americans say processes. We'll agree to disagree on that one. But the reality is, whatever you're currently doing in your business, type it into ChatGPT at a high level. Say, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I want to accomplish. How do we optimize this? And that's where someone like you, who is outsourcing to the Philippines, or even somebody who has a local employee, you can get your employees up to speed faster, and you can optimize the things they're doing without them spending hours and hours doing research. So to me, the number one thing is systems.
I love that. Yeah, and that's what you taught me way back when. For the viewers that don't know you, I've always, when I got into your mastermind years ago, I noticed that you had something different in a number of different areas: focus and implementing. When did you discover that superpower? Because that's the two biggest things that we have to master, because we can have all the ideas in the world, but if you can't focus and you can't get things done, it's just like passing time. When did you discover that for yourself?
Well, it's actually funny, Pete. It's been a double-edged sword that I've danced on and bled from many times. I think I started learning that when I was a kid. So one of my gifts of ADHD, and this is not for everyone, but one of my gifts is something called hyperfocus. And what it means, and this is, people don't believe me, but it's true. I can sit at a screen, sit at a keyboard for 14 hours straight. I forget to eat. I forget to go to the bathroom. I just focus. And so for me, if I set up my work environment to plan those moments, and I'm now, from a health perspective, I've broken that down. I try to take breaks at least once every hour. But I will accidentally get more done than most people just because I'm avoiding doing something else. So if I run into a problem with one project, I step away from that project. I let my brain process it in the background, and then I'll go over to another project. So I've been kind of doing that my whole life. But what that looks like and what people would describe, and you can probably relate as an entrepreneur, a trail of chaos and confusion in my wake, because I could only do the things that I was doing because nobody else knew where I was, knew what I was doing. Quite frankly, I was always inventing the next new thing. So it's not like I could say, oh, could you pick this up and finish it for me? So when I started using AI, my superpowers really came through, because I can hyper focus for an hour. I can get something done, and I don't mean done-ish. It's from start to finish. I can plan something and finish it in an hour. I'm much more productive, and then I can take the next hour and just relax, or I can pick up another project. So the focus was always there. The implementation was sometimes there, not always there. I like to tell people, I'm the guy you want starting a project. Don't ask me to finish. So I will, and to Perry Marshall, I did just double check his book, his Detox, Declutter, Dominate. Highly, highly recommend just reading the book to see how the man actually applied Pareto principle to a book. I mean, that's just genius.
Yes.
So, and if anybody doesn't like Pareto principle, you don't need to talk to me, because I will annoy you all day long. But what AI allowed me to do, Pete, and this is the Pareto principle where I can spend hours and hours ranting about it. What I do with a project is I identify friction that's holding a project back. I identify the momentum levers I need to move the project forward. And then what I do is I get GPT to help me find the Pareto. What's that 20% that'll move me forward faster? And more importantly, what's the 20% I need to eliminate so that I can move forward faster?
Wow, I love it. I get up at 3:30 in the morning, and I'm talking to Trexa and Rolando at usually 5 o'clock Monday through Thursday. So in the afternoon, when my energy starts to go down, I get on the phone and I call people, and not every time, but I'll ask them, like, how are you using AI in your business? And I'll bet you 9 out of 10 people that I talk to are just not even putting the big toe in. They're just kind of like, well, I have it do a few emails, and I'll have it do a little bit of this. So I want you to speak to my community that time is the most valuable thing we have. You have 24 hours, I have 24 hours. How you use your 24 hours can be totally different than how I use mine. So speak to my community that what do you see helpful for somebody to really do what you did to me? Because you kept asking me, how are you doing with AI? Like, are you playing with it? If you weren't persistent, I would probably maybe have started a year later, because I just didn't know the power of it.
Well, I will first of all shout out to my friend and mentor, Dr. Scott Dell. God bless him. He was stubborn enough. He kept reminding me, Jeff, you need to check out AI. Jeff, you need to check out AI. I'm not proud of this, but it took me 6 months to finally look at it. And I'm not kidding. I went back, looked at our correspondence, and I remember the first message was, yeah, whatever. And then the last message I sent him before we both started talking as equals was just this aha moment. And it was like, oh my God, where has this thing been? So for your audience, I want to say, and this is foundational, a lot of people get nervous because it's a keyboard. They're like, oh, I don't understand computers. And what I love about the LLMs that are out there today, you don't need to know computer language. You don't need to know coding. The whole thing is, and the large language model, LLM, language is in the middle. And that's the thing I would say to people, is to get curious. And that's where I think a lot of people fail, is they treat it like a drive-through window. You know, they're going through and they want a Big Mac and a large fries, and yeah, sure, upsize that and make it a meal. That is so beginner to it. And quite frankly, you're going to see the weird hallucinations. You're going to get the garbage outputs because you're not using it properly. And little things, and I'm going to credit Tony Robbins with this. I think at some point in my life, I heard him say the quality of my communication is the quality of my life. And now more recently, I've heard him say the quality of my questions is the quality of my life. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I do, and I want all of your listeners, if you're just dabbling, you're just trying to decide, do I use it or not? I will give whatever model I'm using a little bit of background. I'll say, here's what I'm working on. Here's what I know to be true. Here's what I don't know. Here's where I'm uncertain. And then I play, what questions should I be asking you so that we can get a better result? And then I'll flip it around and say, what questions would you have for me? And so it's going to sound weird, Pete, but the two most critical ingredients to using any technology right now in the AI space is curiosity and the question mark. And, I will ask it, could you tell me your sources? Could you help me understand that? But the key is, start with stuff cold. So as an example, you, my friend, I would not have started you using AI to create show notes because you were still new to creating show notes. I would have started you back at, asking questions about online reputation and building it, because that's what one of your first books was about. So that's what I would say to people, is don't start with something you like. If you don't know a good answer from a great answer from a terrible answer, don't play in that water yet, because you'll get garbage and you won't even know why it's garbage.
Yeah, I like that. I've seen, I do podcasts on people that are in the busy bus where it's chaos, a lot of distractions. And I often say, get on the purpose plane where it's quiet, it's going to a destination. So our time-starved, really busy people that are just, they wake up, they check their emails, they run and they run and they run with no real direction about where they're running. So when it comes to how you are working with small businesses, where do you start them? I understand the prompting, I understand the questioning. Like, where does a small business start on showing those meaningful results so they can kind of almost get the bug?
I love it. Now, rant alert coming, Pete. I am obsessed. My kids both went through elementary school science, and we had to learn the 4 forces of flight. So it's funny that you bring up, I call it the purpose plane, but the 4 forces of flight are really, really simple. Nothing will leave the ground unless you've got forward thrust, you've got to have upward lift, and in the end, you've got to eliminate drag and weight. And so what I look at, and that sounds complicated. If you're bored and you want to figure it out, just type in 4 forces of flight and AI will remind you. But just think about an airplane sitting on the runway. If you don't have fuel, if you don't have that forward momentum, you're not going to get the right amount of lift.
Yeah.
And pilots are painfully aware of the weight. And the aeronautics, they've designed the plane to eliminate as much drag as possible. So what I do with my people is, a lot of entrepreneurs, they're addicted to busy. They're doing 1,000 things. And I'm going to be really blunt. 995 of those things don't matter. They don't help your plane in any way, shape, or form take off. They don't keep it in the air. They're just those little things we juggle to say, I'm busy. And And the fascinating thing, I get resistance all the time to this, but the number one thing I do, and I encourage people, reach out, talk to Pete, talk to me. The number one thing, and it goes back to Perry Marshall's detox, declutter, dominate. First thing is we got to get the head trash out that says I need to be busy. And for the record, if I can't get somebody to say I need to be less busy, I have nothing to offer them because they're not ready. So I like to work with people who have a coach or some sort of mindset person. But the reality is the very first thing is, because these people are exhausted, they're living on adrenaline, their nervous system is in hyperdrive, they're working themselves near to death. You and I have both been there. What we do is we identify, and I keep life simple. We identify 10 things that are heavy or slowing them down. And in my world, I call those hell activities. Those are things, no matter what, we should not be doing. Either we should be automating them, we should be delegating them, we should be eliminating them. We aren't meant to do those things. So if you wake up and you go, oh, I got to do this today, that's one of the things we want to eliminate. So my process is simple. Create a list of the 10 things you hate doing. And on the other side, 10 things you love to do and you love to do more of. So you can see I've got the drag and the weight on the one side. We want to eliminate that. And then on the other side, if we eliminate these things, how can we do more of the stuff we love? And none of this is random. It's all very strategic. But I'm sorry to say I've not yet met an entrepreneur who didn't have 10 hours of crap in their lives every week. Crap that could be completely eliminated, nobody'd notice. And it's just, we get in those routines of this is the way we've always done it. So the first thing we do is we look at what can we eliminate. So my rule is really simple. Let's find 10 hours of garbage and throw it out. Then the next one, and this is where I have a lot of fun, is we replace the 10 hours we threw out. We bring in 5 hours of fun, fascinating, strategic stuff that drives the business forward. And then I force my entrepreneurs to use the other 5 hours to focus on family, faith, freedom, whatever it is. Because if we don't fill that time with something that gets them out of the office, they're just going to find other stupid and bad habits to fall into. There's an addiction to busy. So what I do is try to break that addiction. And I'll credit Perry Marshall with this, because in his books, the 80-20 Sales and Marketing, and in the Detox Declutter, he talks about relative value of tasks at $10 an hour, $100 an hour, $1,000 and $10,000. And it is amazing how many people spend 40 hours a week at the $10 or $100 an hour level.
Yeah.
And they never once ask themselves, is this all there is? It's that hamster on the treadmill. It's like, I just need to run faster and I'll get nowhere faster. So sometimes we just need to take a breath, step off the treadmill.
Yeah, I agree with you on the addiction to being busy. I think, I don't know the exact number, but it was like 85% of the people wake up Monday morning dreading going to work. And I was telling a friend of mine, my call with Trex is 5 o'clock on Monday. It's my most favorite call because we don't talk on Friday. So we have Slack and stuff that she's working on, that Monday. And it's the most exciting time because we're starting with that fuel, with that priority that you talked about. Because I don't do anything but podcast, create courses, and coach. I don't do any of the other stuff I used to do that were the hell things, the activities that drag you down.
Yep.
So how does, if a person is motivated, and I'll use that loosely, are we saying make the list of 10 of those hellish activities, then go the 5 and 5? That's the foundation of starting?
And honestly, so here's my take on this. If you're already working 24/7, you don't need another thing to do. Mm-hmm. But if you can use AI to eliminate and, God forbid, get down to 20 hours a day, 6 days a week, you can use that time to sleep. And that's an extreme, I get it. But the reality is you can't give water to a drowning person and expect them to drink. So first thing, we pull them into the boat, give them a little air, let them breathe. And then as we build in that breathing space, because really, truly, you being a coach, you understand this, they need faith in the system, and they need faith in themselves to follow the system. So I give them that immediate win because it is probably the first time in months they've taken a breath and said, I got this. So I would challenge everybody. And if you aren't self-aware enough to know the difference between things you love and hate doing, that's your first problem to solve. Really, truly sit down. And this sounds a little hippy-dippy, but I sit down after an activity and I go, did that give me energy or did it drain me? Now, for the record, everything takes our energy over time. But if an activity feeds us, it feels like energy, we want to do more of those things. I remember when you and I first started collaborating, you were addicted to busy, and so was I.
Oh yeah. Absolutely addicted to busy.
I shouldn't admit this, but I think if I count, I've come close to working myself to death 4, maybe 5 times. 3 of those involved hospital time and extensive recovery. We as entrepreneurs are stubborn people. We'll keep grinding long after mere mortals have tapped out. But what I want is to prove that we can slow down and the wheels don't fall off the bus.
Yeah, that is, I always, I don't know if I ever shared this with you. I considered myself a closet workaholic.
Yeah.
I was afraid to tell people how much I worked because I didn't feel I had the outcome to justify the amount of hours I would put in. But like the kids would go to bed, I'd head back up, Any chance I could have a minute, I would work. And you just can't, at that pace, I don't know if a stroke gave me that, but it probably did because once I had 49 days to think, and then I started writing and I started getting stuff out of this head, I started to transform. And I remember somebody saying, we have 24 hours. We had 24 hours 100 years ago, but we didn't have electricity. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have AI. And we still operate like we have 24 hours back 100 years ago.
Yeah.
I do 3 days in one. I do 3 5-hour days. So I get 21 days in 7 because I took all the things that I don't like to do out of my life. And I only do stuff, like you just said, that energizes. And it's amazing how much energy we can have if we do that elimination process. So
Well,
what do you think? Like when I've never seen anybody focus like you. I've never seen anybody operate like you. I've never seen anybody write so many books like you. So you've spent 3 years of focus on AI. I would say you're up there with anybody that's the top in implementing into business. So when you have put this together, like I know the first step is to get the exercise. What else are we looking at to help people that were like myself, busy, addicted to busy? We got to get ready for this AI boom, or we're going to be left behind. What can you help us with?
It's fascinating, Pete, because I still see people debating whether AI is here to stay or not. And it is fascinating because you and I are both old enough. I remember when computers first started appearing in offices and people are like, oh, that's not going to, I knew people who held out to the bitter end and then they're like the last one to get electricity in their neighborhood, I'm sure. And then, the last one to get a computer on their desk.
Yeah.
And, the reality is it is really not an exaggeration to say if we don't adapt, we die. And whether you like AI or not, it's here to stay. and we need to learn how to use it's just a tool. We need to learn how to use the modern tools. Believe it or not, there's still I hear weird things on the radio. There's a national grave digging competition in Canada, and people have 2 hours to dig a grave by hand. And all I can say, my grandfather used to dig graves, and I remember when he switched from shovel to backhoe, and it broke his heart because he had to let all his people go. But he could dig a grave or whatever you needed. He was in the business of making holes. He could dig any hole you needed in minutes that used to take days. And it was a choice of, do I embrace technology or do I keep going with the old stuff? Now, ironically, his only competitor died of a heart attack, and he had to dig his competitor's grave. So I joke that he buried the competition. But that's the way AI is. And for the record, this is the single biggest leverage tool in history. It is not, like the shovel to the backhoe was probably 100x improvement. This is tens of thousands of improvement levels, magnitudes. Like, it is a scale we humans can't truly grasp yet, if it's done right. Now, the other weird thing I'm going to say is a lot of what I do is heavily inspired by systems thinking and by human design. And what I do, I don't look to replace humans. I look to augment the existing people we have. You, for example, Pete, I can't do much for you in terms of helping you be a better podcaster. You can only do that. You got to do the reps. You got to practice. But I can help your team support you better. So it's knowing who the leverage points are. And again, I'm not taking anything away from somebody who says, Jeff, I'm a professional, I'm a public speaker. AI is not going to go on stage and replace me as a speaker. No, it's not. But it might help you do a little research to tailor your presentation. It might help you polish your slides. Think of it as a supporting actor, not the main event. So I always look at it and say, as the human in the loop, what do I need help with? So I'm not wasting time getting it to do things that I can do myself, but I will, I'll share a very good example. I believe if you're teaching others, you got to be clear on what your message is. You got to distill it. And one of the things I like to do is get AI to take, I have a 5-stage process that I follow for everything I do. I get AI to create new acronyms depending on the audience. So, for example, I created the ALICE framework, and ALICE stands for assess, lead, implement, cultivate, and enhance.
Okay.
So again, that just helps me remember it. But again, it also helps other people remember what you're doing. So I use it think of it like a really turbocharged thesaurus. Or, I can say, I'm looking for more of a somber mood to this. I'm sharing bad news. I want to make it seem a little more sincere. Give me some more, of that vibe. Or, I want to channel my inner Robin Williams back in the days of Mork from Mork. Okay, let's make it silly and goofy and happy. So knowing what I want to communicate, I can use AI to help me communicate better. Now, if you don't know how to communicate, good news, ask AI. Say, I don't know how to communicate well. Can you help me improve my communication?
Wow. Yeah, so true. We use 2 of your models in the Philippines since January of this year. And I have such great confidence, even though there's a language, there's not a serious language barrier, but there is one.
Yeah.
I know Trexa and Rolando will put it through those models to clean up. And I told them, this is before we were going to have the call a couple of weeks ago. I said, as soon as I talk to Jeff, I'll find out how we can take our AI to another level. And I've waited, because Trex is 2.5 years, almost 3, and Rolanda's almost 2. I waited to do anything because I didn't have any systems. I didn't know what to do, how to scale that area. I could scale podcasting because I know it. But when it comes to those systems and processes in the virtual assistant who role, I just didn't know how to do it, so I didn't do it.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to. I know we would give away a course if they go to pkane.me. Let me just see if I can put something up here because I want to be able. Okay, they can connect with us at pkane.me connect, but if they put the word I think we can set up something because what I was asking you, if we could have you do a workshop for our community, have us. I mean, because I'm a firm believer in workshops. I mean, you got to roll up your sleeves. You got to go to work. There's no shortage, no shortcuts to work. I
Yeah.
mean, to entrepreneurship. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard, and it's harder if we don't embrace systems and processes and what AI can do for us. So I'll just tell our people, just take the word connect. They can connect with us. But more importantly, if they put the word AI after that, when Trexa comes back Monday, we'll set up a way that we can help people with a workshop, help them to really start understanding the leverage points, the friction, the things that they have in their life that will set them free to have that abundant life that's possible when you take all that garbage out of your life and your business.
Well, and I think it was David Sandler. He wrote a book, something about you can't learn how to ride a bike at a seminar. And I think that's so valuable because everybody wants to take a course or learn something. I've written several books on how to use AI, but I promise you, reading the books is useless if you're not going to sit down at a keyboard and try things. And so I would encourage all of your listeners and anybody who sees this to play around. You can't break it. I promise. Now, short of maybe, writing something totally crazy and then posting it on your social and getting in trouble for it, you can't break it unless you're a moron and you let it break you. But what I'm going to suggest, Pete, and I'll throw this out there. So I promised you, and I've been promoting this to my people, I'm going to do a workshop on how to use 4 of my favorite, I call them Catalyst Crew. And here's what I'm going to offer. So the plan for the workshop is it's going to be 90 minutes. We're going to cover 4 of my favorite tools. And I'll explain that in just a second. But what I'm going to do for you, Pete, is if people come and they connect with you and we'll get Trexa to set this up, I will record the how-to pieces. So we will be charging for the workshop 90 minutes. We're going to charge $180 for it. But I don't want anybody there who needs to be convinced that AI works. So for your audience only, and we'll figure out how we make it restrictive, I'll give them the content from the workshop. What they're not going to get is the time to sit and ask me questions. So if they take it and they do it, then they want to answer the questions, they can come to the workshop. But I personally believe, and I feel very strongly about this, there is a lot of garbage out there. And unfortunately, if you go into ChatGPT and you type in, how can I get rich using you? Number one thing, it'll tell you to create YouTube, TikTok, whatever videos telling other people how to get rich using ChatGPT. So if you're in that mindset and you want to learn how to get rich using ChatGPT, not me. But if you want to learn how to enrich your life and bring ChatGPT into it, me. That's what I do all day long. Mm-hmm. So the thing I'm going to share with you, Pete, and we talked about this briefly, and I'm going to talk about the role that we're covering, but basically I have 4 of my favorites. So a custom GPT is just a system where you put in the same inputs, you follow the same process, and then you get the same output every time. So if you've got something that you do that is repetitive, I build custom GPTs to speed up that repetitive thing. So the 4 that I'm going to share for our audience, Pete, Patricia is my all-time favorite. And what she does is ask you some questions about who you serve so that you can create a very detailed, ideal client profile.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in my world, I call that a perfect prospect persona. But the idea is we want to get really clear on who we serve, because if we don't know who we serve, nothing else we do in our business matters.
True.
So think of this as the laser guidance, the target.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing we have my second favorite, her name's Olivia, and she creates the core objectives. And think of those as the 5-year vision that guides your company. It's the North Star that whenever you get adrift, you can reset and say, this isn't following us, bringing us closer to our core objectives. We need to correct. And then we've got Samantha. Samantha takes the high level vision and she creates a strategic plan so that for the next 90 days through to 3 to 5 years, we're slowly building progress towards our core objectives. And then my last one, she's goofy. And yes, I refer to them as he and she. It seems humanist to call them it. I give them personalities. I give them characters. They are my coworkers. So my wife calls them my imaginary friends. But Carrie is my favorite, second favorite after Patricia. What she does is she builds out a detailed customer journey map. And why that matters is most people, I'm not kidding, I see this in networking, I see it in marketing, I see it in sales. Hey, Pete, I got widgets. How many do you want? Pete's like, I don't need widgets. Oh, okay, screw you, Pete. I'm going to go talk to somebody else. I got widgets. How many do you want? None. Oh, screw you. I'm going to the next one. What the customer journey does is it recognizes that there are people who may become your client someday. There are people who will become your client today. And then there's everybody else who doesn't even know that they need what you need. And by the way, in any market, there's 30%, no matter what you do, will never buy from you. Stop wasting your time trying to get their attention. But if you build out a customer journey map and you tailor it to your customer, your ideal client, it makes you more referable. It makes it easier for people to recommend you. But it also gives you clarity because, and Pete, you're going to love this, in business, 20% of the people we work with will bring us 80% of our profit. We're wasting our time chasing anybody else.
Yeah.
So if we focus, laser focused on who we serve, and we're crystal clear on what we do for them, instead of us going around looking for them and chasing them, they start beating our door down because they found us and they're begging to work with us. So as an example, the customer journey map, you have people who think they might need AI, but they're not entirely sure. So for me, I've created my 4 favorites. I'm going to show people, here's how AI can help you in bite-sized chunks. And if they want to work with me, great. But if they look at it, I don't like the shape of that guy's head. He's weird. He talks too fast. He talks too weird. Okay. We don't need to work together because I got news for you. I don't get less annoying. I don't get any more normal. This is me. So I'm pretty clear who I want to serve. And if people don't like that, I don't need to try and convince them otherwise.
Yeah. No, it's so refreshing to work with people that want to work with you. I mean, that's kind of like the wind's behind your sails. And I think we fight it by trying to convince the 30% that'll never buy from you. And we spend all that energy on stuff that doesn't get us anything.
Yep.
And if we just kind of know who we serve and work with people that want to work with you, life's beautiful. It's that freedom that I think we all want in a business, but we don't know how to get there.
Well, and I just want to point out, Pete, back in the day, 1600s or what have you, the Jesuit ministers would go out into the wild and they would try to convert the heathens. And usually they'd end up roasted on a spit. It was not a good experience for either side. And I don't want to convert somebody to AI as my, quasi-religion. But if somebody wants to learn AI, I will give them all the tools they need to move forward. But if somebody comes to me and says, AI sucks, prove me wrong, I just smile and say, you're right. And I walk away because they believe it to be true. Therefore, it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. We'll put in the show notes that link. So if you forget about pkane.me/AI, we'll put it in the show notes so you can click, because I do know our community wants to move forward, wants to see what potential is out there. They hear sound bites, but they don't know where to start, and they don't know how to really make that needle move by working with people that want to work with you and doing things that, that I believe in that 80%, it's like, or the 20% that does the 80%, and you keep refining that formula. It's a beautiful thing when that wind is behind your sails in your business. So, Jeff, I want to be respectful of your time. I think, because I know one thing, you run a very tight ship. When it's like, I've gotten closer to that. I never was before I started on this journey, but it's a beautiful thing when you set those boundaries and you learn how to focus, because I wasn't the best focused guy years ago. I'm much better today. So thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Well, tell our viewers, like, what is the one thing you would want them to take home from our podcast today?
I think the biggest thing would be to treat AI as a tool, not as a replacement. So, how would you use this to make your life better? And find the things that you know well enough to know that you can validate that it is a better outcome. And that would be it. The other, I would ask, look for ways you can enhance your current systems using AI, because that will give you that time you need. So think of AI as a lever to give you free time, not as a way to waste time like other activities do.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much, Jeff. I always leave my podcast: be bold, make an impact, and have fun. And I tell you, if you can't have fun in your business, you're not going to be around long, because business is tough. So have some fun along the way. So thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you from north of the border bringing the message of freedom through AI.
I
See,
love
it's
it. Thank
hard.
you, Pete.
All right. You have a wonderful day. And thank you for listening. Share this with people you think need to hear the message that we talked about today. Thank you.